Charles Carethers, who is here all the way from Cornerstone Group, based where, Charles?
Washington, D.C.
And Charles, I understand, is a native of Boston. Is that correct?
Yeah, born and raised.
Born and raised in Boston. So you spent some time, on the streets that Al Hajj Malik Al Shabazz or Malcolm X used to walk back in the day, Roxborough, right?
Yeah, back in the day when he was Detroit Red.
Detroit Red, absolutely.
Yeah, when he walked the streets of Roxbury, where I'm from, actually.
All right. Had you ever passed by his old home? I understand they're trying to turn that into a national, I guess, treasure or national marker.
Historic site. Yeah, When I was younger, a few times.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So he has embodied in him, that by any means necessary spirit. Well, without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Charles, who is an expert, advocate. I don't want to use the word lobbyist because we here in Washington know that we think of lobbyists as being the boogeyman, if you will. But indeed, these are people. Lobbyists are good people too, or something like that.
So a lot of us are.
That's right. Some of my best friends are lobbyists, right?
especially if we're on your side.
Absolutely, absolutely. So maybe this is a good segue. Why don't you tell us what is a lobbyist and what do we want, or an advocate, and what do we want each one of our colleagues who are logged in right now, and those who are going to be logging in later and engaging in these meetings, what do we want them to take away, and how can they prepare themselves? I'm going to turn it over to you to continue that conversation.
Thank you for teeing that up for me. So let's take a step back and try to unpackage this. Why is advocacy important, right? That's the million-dollar question. So a phrase, if you don't remember anything else, I want you to take away this phrase coined by former Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, former Speaker of the House when Ronald Reagan was president, Tip O'Neill from the great state of Massachusetts. All politics is local. All politics is local. Your story, your mission, it's important, especially if it's a local issue. Members of Congress care about their constituents. Members of Congress are plugged into the cares, concerns, frustrations of their constituents, whether it be a particular congressional district or you're a senator and you care about all the people in your entire state. Members of Congress listen to constituents and they follow the local media. Talk about your local news outlets and your even more obscure, less popular print media. Members listen to national, state, and local organizations that represent issues they champion. And advocacy, another important aspect, is that coalitions work to build a bigger voice, right? So, but we need to face, the reality of politics here. Members of Congress and other elected officials rely on campaign donations and listen to their donors and corporate constituents, right? So, donors get more face time than your average citizen. That may come off negative, but they contribute to fundraisers and they interact at fundraisers with members of Congress, especially in the House of Representatives, who have more fundraisers because they're constantly running for office. They run for office every 2 years. And given the speed of the election cycle, the 24-hour news cycle, they're constantly running for office. They're constantly campaigning. So, big corporations and wealthy individuals can use money to make their voices heard. And many organizations and groups don't have that ability, right? And there are at a disadvantage in the system of pay-to-play politics. So their voices, their commitment, their stories, their advocacy, right? Individually and collectively, as members of professional or community organizations are valuable. Why? Because all politics is local. With that being said, when advocating, a personal story is always the most effective approach. It's what lawmakers and decision makers remember. So I want you to just put on your hat. Think back to the last speech you heard a member of Congress gave, or the last talking points you heard a member recite, whether it be at a hearing, a roundtable discussion. What's one thing they always gravitate toward? It's a local story. It could be, a hearing on cyber education, and a member will say, in my district we just opened up a new charter school, and the key point of this charter school is that we have embedded a cybersecurity curriculum. Right? There's always a local tie. And then oftentimes you get a hearing on agriculture, and you'll see a member of Congress bring up something unrelated to agriculture, but related to their district, right? Related to their constituency. And you might say to yourself, oh my goodness, like this has nothing to do with this hearing. This is not germane to the topic at hand. Why does this congressman, why does this congresswoman always bring up an issue back at their home state that's not even related to our topic? Well, that's because all politics is local and they're running for re-election. And that's what a good politician will do. If you see a politician not invoking, some relationship back to the home district, then, that should be cause for concern, because they try to tie everything back home. That's important. All politics is local. So, members of Congress always want to hear from constituent advocates, right? I find it rare that a member of Congress or their staff won't meet with a constituent, unless that constituent is known to have certain issues, right? There are certain times where you get some eccentric, and I'm being nice here, some eccentric individuals who just like to cause trouble and be aggravating, or say or make statements that are wildly offensive or inappropriate, right? So you tend not to deal with those. You tend not to take meetings with those. But if you are a constituent, let's say you're from, Mississippi's 2nd Congressional District, the district of Chairman Benny Thompson, chairman of the Committee on Homeland Security, and you have an issue and you want to advocate for increased cyber funding for your school, I can guarantee you that Chairman Thompson himself or his staff will meet with you, because all politics is local. You never want to be a member of Congress that turns his or her back on constituents, right? So, with that being said, you got to be persuasive and personal in your communication, in your outreach, in your advocacy to a member of Congress. Individual letters and emails, don't go unheard if you're a constituent. Written letters are rare given the digital age that we're in. But I'll tell you what, if I receive, a written letter, I'm going to pay close attention to that written letter. Advocates also focus on, sharing their personal experience. How did this particular problem affect you, your children, your loved ones? How will this issue improve life for their children, life for their community, life for their students, life for this broader constituency, right? This is very, very, very important. Again, there are challenges. All politics is local, but navigating Capitol Hill can be difficult, or navigating the government can be challenging. Especially with what we call the Iron Triangle, right? Which are interest groups, congressional committees and subcommittees, executive branch agencies, and their political appointees. That's what we call like the Iron Triangle, right? Those sometimes can be difficult to navigate because interest groups are powerful. They have funding. Congressional committees and subcommittees are very specific. You got to know who to reach out to within a particular committee. Oftentimes, though, those contacts aren't widely publicized. All right. Budgets and appropriations can be complex.